The moment Gloves Off Episode 1 officially began, it didn't feel like a standard boxing promo or just another episode meant to hype a fight. Instead, it felt like the opening chapter of something much deeper, something layered with tension, pride, and an unspoken rivalry that had clearly been building long before the cameras ever started rolling. Because when David Benavidez and Gilberto Ramirez were brought into the same environment, the atmosphere instantly shifted in a way that was impossible to ignore, and even before any words were exchanged, there was a visible sense that this wasn't just about promotion, this was about proving something real, something personal, something that goes beyond rankings and titles. From the very first visuals, the production made it clear that this fight carries weight, not just because of who these fighters are, but because of what they represent inside the sport of boxing, with Benavidez being known as a relentless force who overwhelms opponents with constant pressure, high-volume punching, and an aggressive mindset that leaves very little room to breathe, while Ramirez represents a completely different approach, one built on patience, calculated movement, and a level of composure that allows him to stay in control even in high-pressure situations, and this contrast alone created a narrative that instantly captured attention across both USA and UK audiences who are always drawn to stylistic clashes. As both fighters sat across from each other, the silence between them became one of the most powerful moments of the entire episode, because it wasn't an awkward silence, it was a focused one, the kind where both individuals are mentally locked in, analyzing, observing, and preparing for what's about to come. And when the first question was finally asked about respect between them, Benavidez responded with a confident tone, acknowledging Ramirez as a skilled opponent but making it clear that he doesn't believe Ramirez can handle the level of pressure he brings into the ring, and that statement alone immediately shifted the energy in the room. Ramirez, however, did not react with emotion or aggression, and that in itself became a powerful response, because instead of raising his voice or pushing back in a confrontational way, he calmly explained that pressure is only effective if it's applied correctly and that he has faced a wide range of styles throughout his career, adapting to each one with discipline and intelligence. And that subtle but sharp response introduced the idea that Benavidez's greatest strength might not be as overwhelming as many believe, creating an early layer of tension that continued to build throughout the episode. As the conversation progressed, both fighters began revealing more about their mindset, and this is where the intensity truly started to rise, because Benavidez leaned heavily into his identity as a fighter who doesn't just aim to win but to dominate, explaining that once he establishes his rhythm and begins applying pressure, most opponents struggle to keep up and eventually break down both physically and mentally, while Ramirez countered with a completely different philosophy, emphasizing that discipline, timing, and control are far more effective than raw aggression, suggesting that smart boxing can neutralize even the most relentless pressure, and this clash of ideologies made the fight feel incredibly unpredictable. The producers then shifted the focus toward preparation, asking both fighters how they are training and what their approach will be going into this matchup, and what stood out immediately was the difference in energy between them, because Benavidez spoke with intensity and confidence about pushing the pace, controlling the fight, and making it uncomfortable from the very beginning, while Ramirez maintained a calm and composed tone, describing a strategy built around patience, positioning, and waiting for the right opportunities, and that contrast added another layer to the narrative that fans found compelling. As the questions became more direct, both fighters were pushed to address criticism and doubts that have followed them throughout their careers, with Benavidez speaking about how people often underestimate his technical ability by focusing only on his aggression, insisting that his skill set is far more complete than people realize, while Ramirez addressed the perception that he lacks the kind of power needed to keep a pressure fighter like Benavidez at bay, making it clear that power is not the only path to victory and that strategy plays an equally important role. The conversation then moved toward legacy, and this is where the emotional weight of the fight became even more apparent, because both fighters made it clear that this matchup represents a defining moment in their careers, with Benavidez viewing it as an opportunity to prove that he belongs among the elite and can dominate at the highest level, while Ramirez framed it as a chance to silence critics and demonstrate that his style can overcome even the most aggressive opponents, and that emotional investment added a deeper sense of importance to the fight. One of the most intense moments came when they were asked directly who would win and how, and instead of giving generic answers, both fighters leaned into their confidence, with Benavidez stating that his pressure will be too much and that he sees himself breaking Ramirez down round by round until the fight is completely under his control, while Ramirez calmly responded that patience and timing will expose openings that others have failed to see, and that he believes the fight will shift in his favor as it progresses, and that exchange created a visible tension that could be felt even through the screen. As the episode continued, it became clear that this was not just a conversation but a psychological battle, with both fighters trying to establish dominance not just physically but mentally, using their words, their tone, and their body language to send messages to each other, and that added a level of depth that made the episode far more engaging than a typical promotional segment. The producers then introduced training footage, giving fans a glimpse into how each fighter is preparing for the fight, and the contrast was once again evident, with Benavidez training at a relentless pace, focusing on endurance, volume, and pressure, while Ramirez worked on precision, movement, and timing, reinforcing the idea that this fight is truly a clash of styles. As the episode returned to the sit-down setting, the tension had noticeably increased, with both fighters becoming more direct in their responses and less willing to hold back, and when asked about weaknesses, neither fighter gave a clear answer but their responses hinted at how seriously they are taking this matchup. The discussion then shifted toward fan expectations, particularly in the USA and UK where interest in the fight is rapidly growing, and both fighters acknowledged the pressure but made it clear that their focus remains on performance rather than hype, understanding that delivering in the ring is what truly matters. Another key moment came when the topic of ring control was brought up, because this is where their styles directly collide, with Benavidez insisting that his pressure will dictate the pace and force Ramirez into uncomfortable situations, while Ramirez argued that true control comes from timing, positioning, and making your opponent fight your fight rather than theirs. As the tension continued to build, even the smallest details such as eye contact, posture, and tone of voice became significant, because neither fighter showed any signs of doubt, creating an atmosphere where every moment felt meaningful. The producers then began building toward the final face-off, and as both fighters stood up and walked toward each other, the energy in the room shifted instantly, becoming quiet, intense, and focused, as if everyone present understood the importance of what they were about to witness. When they finally stood face to face, locking eyes without saying a word, the moment carried a level of intensity that didn't need explanation, because everything was communicated through their presence, their confidence, and their refusal to back down, creating one of the most powerful visuals of the episode. What made the face-off even more compelling was the control both fighters maintained, with no pushing or shouting, just pure focus and intensity, which made the moment feel authentic rather than staged. As cameras captured every angle, fans across the USA and UK reacted instantly, with clips spreading rapidly on social media and debates beginning over who looked more confident and who might have the psychological edge. When the face-off ended, both fighters returned to their positions without breaking character, maintaining the same level of focus and intensity, which only reinforced how serious this fight is for both of them. As the episode began to close, it became clear that this was only the beginning of something much bigger, because the tension, the rivalry, and the narrative have only just started to develop. The final moments of the episode reinforced the idea that this fight is not just about physical ability but about mindset, discipline, and execution, and that unpredictability is what makes it so compelling. In the end, Gloves Off Episode 1 did more than promote a fight, it created a story that fans are now emotionally invested in, a story that raises a fundamental question about which style will prevail when these two fighters finally meet. And after everything that unfolded, one thing is absolutely certain, which is that when these two fighters step into the ring, it will not just be another fight, it will be a defining moment that could shape their careers and potentially deliver one of the most shocking outcomes boxing fans have seen in recent years.